Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 3rd and tonight's movie is Longlegs. This is another one of those second chance movies. The director of this film is Osgood Perkins, which is definitely a name I have ever heard in my life. He also directed the movie Blackcoat's Daughter, which I did watch for Horror Nights, and I don't really remember much about the movie. I just kind of remember it being gloomy and underwhelming. This is one of the few horror movies I actually heard about organically. Like, I didn't need to look this up. I knew about it. This movie had a very interesting marketing strategy. It was almost like an ARG. The trailers were like not labeled as Longlegs trailers, like they were given these weird random names, and they were very vague about what the movie was about. I did watch a more conventional trailer for this movie, and it also was pretty vague, but I did get the basic outline of the plot. We are following an FBI agent who is investigating a serial killer, and there's definitely sort of an occultic religious horror sort of theme. This movie has Nicolas Cage as one of the leads, and we never see him in the trailer, but we do hear him speak. This actually reminds me a lot of the movie Sinister, and I did not like Sinister, so maybe this will do what that movie didn't. Yesterday's attempt at a redemption arc did not go well, but I hope that this one does better. I'm gonna go watch it and tell you what I think. That movie was very interesting. I think I'm going to give it like a 7 out of 10. It reminded me a lot of two movies, which coincidentally were directed by the same person, but the movies were Sinister and The Black Phone. And I didn't like Sinister, but I did like The Black Phone a lot, and I would put this movie in between the two of those. There are parts of it that really work, and a lot of parts of it that just fell flat. They felt pointless or like took away from the atmosphere. I definitely thought it was better than Blackcoat's Daughter because I pretty much forgot about that movie. I can't imagine myself forgetting about Longlegs for a while. I said that Nicolas Cage wasn't present in the trailer visually, but now seeing the movie, he might have, and I just didn't know because he does not look very much like himself in this film. I feel like that does sort of segue into the elephant in the room. The villain of this movie, Longlegs, the satanic serial killer, is, as far as I can tell, a cross-dresser. He uses a male name and male pronouns, but definitely presents as more female. Now, horror movies, and really movies in general, but horror movies especially, have not always had the best track record in their representation of gender nonconforming people. Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs is a very famous example of that. But one thing I noticed in this movie is that this man's gender presentation is never brought up. It's never acknowledged. They don't reference it. The closest I can think of is a side character referring to him as that gross man. But in the context of that scene, you could also think that was more in reference to his behavior. So it is something that they put in the movie, but I can't imagine they were intending to make any sort of point about it because they never talked about it. So yes, Nicolas Cage may have actually been in the trailer and I just didn't notice because he was in drag. It actually goes beyond that. He was wearing like these facial prosthetics that completely just changed the shape of the face. It was mostly from the voice that I was able to tell that was Nicolas Cage. And his performance was reminiscent of Ethan Hawke's performance in The Black Phone. It was cartoonishly evil. He was hamming it up, and you could tell he was having fun. Though Nicolas Cage is one of those actors where there's just something about him. I don't know how to describe it besides Nicolas Cage. And he Nicolas Caged all over this movie. I actually thought a much more notable acting performance was the lead, Lee Harker, played by Maya Monroe. She was the lead in It Follows. I saw that movie a long time ago, and I don't really remember much about her performance, but I thought that her performance in this movie was great. Her partner for most of this movie, Agent Carter, he was played by Blair Underwood. I liked his performance too. I liked the conversations between the two of them. When it comes to this movie's horror, I thought it was a little underwhelming. A lot of the horror, I think, is supposed to come from Nicolas Cage's performance as Longlegs, but there is a point of just over the top where even if it's being played completely straight, it feels goofy, and that was the case for a lot of this movie. I do remember one scare at the very end, or towards the very end, that was excellent. I thought that was great. It was Lee in a house, and the way the shot was framed is that she was blocking like the room behind her, and when she moved, you could see a silhouette of what looks like a goat horned devil behind, and they don't acknowledge it. There's no sound, it's just there. It was very odd watching this movie because it was like a pretty even split of scenes that did work really well with other parts that are just so awkward and poorly paced. It was just weird. Like scenes went on for a lot longer than you expect them to. A lot of the dialogue is just way out of left field, and some of it could be explained by the characters being crazy. But one of the characters is this kid named Ruby, and she does not act or talk like any kid I've ever seen. It is like off putting the dialogue that they gave this child to read. And there's nothing like up with that character at all. They were just a kid. I kept comparing it to Sinister and the Black Phone in my mind, and it was like Sinister with slightly better dialogue and a much more likable lead character. And it was like the Black Phone, but it was not nearly as engaging as that movie was. There are some movies I would give a 7 out of 10 to because most of the things about it were just okay. This is one of those movies I'm giving a 7 out of 10 to because it has some high highs and some low lows. Overall, I definitely wouldn't say I'm a fan of Osgood Perkins now, but definitely this was a movie I liked a lot more than The Blackcoat's Daughter. And I guess now I'll talk about some spoilers. One of the things that they establish about Lee towards the beginning of the movie is that she's like kind of psychic, but it's the kind of psychic that's very common in movies that's never actually like helpful and also just doesn't really lead to anything else in the movie. The Longlegs serial killer, and I have no idea why he called himself that. Sort of has like that Zodiac thing of like leaving coded messages and like murdering in a very ritualistic way. One thing that is notable is that he was never present at any of the scenes of the crimes. The members of the families killed each other. If it weren't for the notes that he leaves at the scene of the crime and the fact that all the families have a daughter whose birthday is on a 14th of a month, there would be nothing to connect these together. Longlegs definitely shows an interest in Lee Harker, and that's because she was almost one of his victims. Like, he went to her house and she actually took a Polaroid picture of it while it was happening. She just doesn't remember it because of the choice that her mother made. Apparently, she was presented with the option of either allowing her and her daughter to die or to help Longlegs. In exchange for her daughter's safety and wiping it from her memory, she became an accomplice to Longlegs. Apparently, it was a thing where she would pretend to be a nun and say, the church has given you a gift, and give this big life size doll to a family. And I don't know why anybody would accept that, but whatever. And the doll sort of acts like a conduit, makes one of the family members goes crazy and kill everyone else. She remembers this. She is able to like uncover that memory in her mind while she's unconscious. And when she wakes up, she also discovers that Longlegs was actually living in the basement of her childhood house. And when she's leaving, she gets a phone call from some like deep gravelly voice saying, "You're gonna miss Ruby's birthday party." Ruby was the name of her partner Carter's kid, and I have no idea who made that call or why anyone who wanted that murder to happen would tell her about it. But whatever, she does go there, but by then it's too late. The mother and the doll are in the house, and the dad is getting ready to kill everybody. And this is the point where Lee actually does step up. It's sort of like a cliche that like people have guns in movies and they don't use them, but she uses the gun. She shoots Carter when he comes at them with a knife, and she actually shoots her mother in the head. And I noticed that the shape of the entry wound looked like an inverted cross. And Longlegs was already dead at that point in the movie. He banged his face against the table until he was dead. So at this point, both the criminal and the accomplice are gone. These murders should be over. And she saves Ruby from dying. It's certainly not an easy victory because she had to learn that a lot of her life had been a lie and she had to kill her mother, but it was her being able to step up and get things done. I thought that the ending to this movie was decent, and it was enough to overall, I'd say that this movie was okay. It's all over the place, but overall, I definitely have more good things to say about it than bad. If you like Nicolas Cage, this movie definitely has him doing things that only he would do. And overall, while it wasn't the best, it was interesting and at times very entertaining. All right, that's it. See you tomorrow.